When it comes to choosing wheels and tyres for your road bike, it can all seem pretty confusing. But what about choosing wheels and tyres for your gravel bike? I mean, where do you start with that? Well, fear not, because in this video, I'm going to explain what to look out for and why. I'll start with the most obvious question. What actually is a gravel-specific wheelset? To illustrate this and help you understand gravel wheels better, I'm using Shimano's latest GRX gravel wheelset, the RX870 to be precise, with their fancy carbon rims. You see, with gravel riding becoming more and more popular, manufacturers have started to make products better suited to the demands placed on our equipment. And when compared to your usual road wheels, a gravel wheel set needs to offer an increased flexibility in the type of tyres that you can use, and the strength and robustness of the wheel set moves up the priority list a notch or two. The wheel rim is one of the main differences between a road and gravel wheel set. These ones are 32mm deep. Externally, they're 30mm wide, and internally, they're 25mm wide, which means you can run tyres between 32 and 50mm wide, which gives you plenty of scope when choosing a tyre suitable for you. But I'll focus a bit more on those tyres in a minute. So when choosing your gravel wheels, I'd prioritise the rim internal width over the rim depth, and I'd aim for around the 25mm internal width marker. Go much wider than that and you're going to be able to fit much wider tyres, but you do need to make sure those wider tyres are going to fit through your frame and through your forks. Having just said strength and robustness have moved up the priority list, I think it's fair to say aerodynamics have moved down a notch or two. You see, quite simply, once you start fitting these larger volume tyres, the aerodynamic benefit to be had compared to when using deeper road wheels is somewhat diminished. That's not to say aerodynamics isn't important on gravel, because it most certainly is, but the advantage to be had is greatly reduced compared to when on the road. And it means there isn't that huge advantage to be had when using those 60mm deep carbon wheels, although they are still going to look cool as hell. So when it comes to choosing the wheel depth for your gravel wheels, I think it's probably fair to say it's better to go with a more conservative option, somewhere around the 30mm marker, and I feel that'll be a sensible choice. Now, in the instance of these latest GRX wheels, we've got a carbon fibre rim, and Shimano have upped the rim height to 32mm to try to improve the wheel's aerodynamics relative to the size of tyres that we've used. But they've managed to keep the weight down to 1,461 grams, which is comparable to many road wheel set weight. However, I would say your wheel's overall weight isn't as crucial as when you're out riding on the road, and that's due to having these big chunky boy tyres fitted. Which leads us to another question. Should you choose alloy or carbon wheels? Something I don't think you should be too hung up on. Using a carbon rim will offer a slight improvement to the overall wheel performance, but at an increased cost. However, using an alloy rim will offer slightly less in terms of the wheel's overall performance, but often at a significantly reduced cost. But what about those tyres? Because if you haven't heard me say this about 10,000 times before, your tyres are one of the easiest ways to fine-tune and tweak the characteristics of your bike. And when you're riding on gravel, that is super important, especially when you consider there are lots of bikes out there at the moment being sold as do-it-all bikes purely by changing your tyres. What you can use is going to be dictated by the rim width and the design. Now, I've already mentioned internally, these rims are 25mm wide, and they also use a hooked design, which is going to give you plenty of options when choosing your tyre. The tyres that I've got fitted are 40mm wide Pirellis, and I feel they offer a good balance for if you're riding both on-road and off-road. However, if you intend to ride a little bit more off-road, then you could choose something a little bit wider. But if you plan on sticking to the tarmac a bit more, you could drop down closer to a 35mm width. The tyres I'm using have got a less aggressive tread pattern to help reduce the rolling resistance, both on-road and off-road. Although if I was riding a bit more off-road, perhaps some mud, maybe some harsh rocky terrain, then I'd want to choose a tyre that had a more aggressive tread pattern and was as wide as my wheels and frame could accommodate. On the flip side of that, spend 15 minutes fitting road tyres to your wheels and you've got a wheel tyre combo comparable in performance to many road wheels. In terms of using tubeless or inner tubes, I'd strongly recommend you run your tyres tubeless. The gravel tyres with their wide width and low pressures really lend themselves to that tubeless system. Something else you should look out for is that many wheels will come with a tubeless rim take pre-installed and tubeless valves in the box. So it's worth checking, because otherwise that could be another 20 to 30 pounds, euros or dollars that you hadn't factored in on spending. If you go down that tubeless route, which I thoroughly hope you do, something else you'll be able to look into is tyre liners. These are foam inserts which sit within the tyre and allow you to run a lower pressure to maximise comfort and grip. It also avoids that heart-stopping moment should you ever bash into something, because it offers extra protection for the rim. Downside of a tyre liner is that it can make some tyres particularly tricky to install and remove, which could be quite the pain if you're out in the wilderness. Shimano say this wheelset is designed for riding, racing, exploring and even bushwhacking along old goat paths, although I'm not entirely sure what that is. But jokes aside, if you are someone that struggles with removing and fitting their tyres, think carefully before you go down that tyre liner route. By this point, you should have a pretty good understanding of the characteristics to look for when choosing a gravel-specific wheelset. But have you asked yourself this question? Do I really need a gravel-specific wheelset? Well, that very much depends on your individual circumstances and how extreme your gravel riding is. I mean, there are plenty of advantages to using a gravel wheelset, but the simple answer is no. You don't need a gravel-specific wheel, and in many cases, your usual road wheel will be more than okay. But you'll just have to accept the fact that you'll be using a product which is specifically designed with that purpose in mind, and therefore in some situations, it'll be slightly compromised. With all that in mind, there are a few other details on these wheels which I feel deserve a mention. We've got a proven cup and cone bearing system, a centre lock disc fitment, we've got 24 spokes front and rear, and in terms of bike compatibility, they're 11 and 12 speed Shimano compatible and use a 12mm through axle. So that's what I feel is some really helpful information to help you on your way to choosing your gravel wheels and tyres. And a quick thanks to Shimano for helping illustrate my thoughts through the use of their latest GRX wheels. And I do hope you enjoyed this video. And you know what? I'm keen to hear your thoughts on the subject. So let me know in the comments section down below. Right, I'm off to get some lunch, get back to shredding some gravel. See you in a bit. Ugh.